Good afternoon and welcome to a discussion on the Small Business Administration's assistance in response to the COVID-19 crisis. I'm Kit Cramer. I'm president of the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome business people throughout the Western region to this conversation. One of the first things we did when our county began to call for closures of businesses was to do some research with those businesses to see what employers were concerned about. And almost universally, they talk about cash flow. That's not a surprise. So their ability to pay their employees, pay bills, pay their landlord, and keep their business solvent was that response. So today we're pleased to talk with North Carolina's District Director of the Small Business Administration, Thomas Stith. He is joined by Sharon Harvey, the Senior Area Manager for Asheville and the Western area. And Thomas and Sharon, we thank you for joining us. I noted that they are both relative newcomers to, Sharon's new to this area, and Thomas is new to this job, and what a great time to be responsible for the SBA in North Carolina, Thomas.
Okay, Kit, first of all, let me thank you for the opportunity for Sharon and I to speak to businesses throughout the western part of the state. And you're correct, while I'm about 6 months in this role, I'm a native North Carolinian, and not only do I have a passion for small businesses through my professional life, I'm very committed to making sure that North Carolina, not only our small businesses, but our communities recover from this just tragic pandemic. So we appreciate the opportunity to speak to the small business community there in Western North Carolina.
Great. And we've got 147 participants on the line with us at the moment. I sense that number will grow because we had almost 300 people registered for this conversation. So people are hungry for the information you have to offer. I want to make sure, given that we've got potentially such a large crowd, the numbers are ticking up as I'm talking. I want to make sure that we handle this as well as we can. We won't be able to take questions verbally on the call, but if you choose to ask a question, please use the Q&A function rather than the chat function. It'll be a little less distracting for everyone if we're using the Q&A. That will allow us to consolidate some of the questions. So please use the Q&A function rather than the chat function. And if you or anyone you know would like to listen to a recorded version of this call, it's going to be hosted on our business page, which is at ashevillechamber.org/coronavirus. You'll see that there are other recorded town halls and webinars there that you might find helpful, and you're welcome to share that link with others because we're all in this together. We know that for sure. So let's jump in. Thomas, can you describe the types of relief that are available through the Small Business Administration and how businesses can access it?
I can, Kit, and first let me say, we sometimes forget about the role of small businesses. Obviously at SBA we don't. We have over 900,000 businesses across the state of North Carolina that are small businesses. They employ 1.7 million of our friends, our families, our neighbors. And so this is a significant part of our economy. What I would like to do is go through just a brief presentation that will give an overview of what initiative SBA has to offer at this time, and then certainly be engaged with the question and answer, because I know in many cases there are more questions than there are answers, and so we want to allow a lot of time for engagement today. Is that fine for you?
That works for me. So take it away. In the meantime, I'm gonna look at the questions and answers as you talk. I hope folks will listen carefully to what Thomas has to say rather than getting wrapped up about what your question is. You might just want to dump it onto the Q&A because I bet he's heard these questions before.
Okay. And so just want to check my technology. Do you see my first slide? It should be a cover slide.
Yep, we do indeed.
All right. Well, now, do you see our administrator, Jovita Carranza, okay. I thought it would be very helpful just to give an idea of how North Carolina arrived at this point as far as SBA's response. On March 18th of this year, North Carolina received full declaration of a disaster in all 100 counties. This enables small businesses to be eligible for disaster recovery funding. Unfortunately, here in North Carolina, we've experienced hurricanes here out in Western North Carolina. There have been historic fires, but not in recent history have we seen all 100 counties declared as a disaster. And this enabled businesses to be eligible for disaster recovery relief. At this point, I wanted to talk about 3 areas, and 2 in particular, that are now available to small businesses and nonprofits throughout North Carolina and obviously in the western part of the state. After the March 18th declaration, small businesses throughout our state became eligible for economic injury disaster loans. Many of your listeners may have also been aware that on March 27th of this year, the CARES Act was passed. And within the CARES Act, there was significant benefit for small businesses. The Paycheck Protection Program, which is designed to provide economic infusion into small businesses to retain their current staffing, and also the Small Business Debt Relief. We won't go into a lot of detail. We'll welcome questions on that, but that's an opportunity for existing small businesses that have SBA loans to have their payments paid for the next 6 months. But we'll focus mainly today on the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program and the most recent Paycheck Protection Program. The Paycheck Protection Program, as I mentioned, is designed to incentivize businesses to maintain their current employees. This loan is accessed through your local lender. SBA literally provides guarantees for these loans as opposed to you dealing direct with SBA. These loans can go up to $10 million with the terms of 2 years and 1% interest. But the key component is there is a forgivable clause within the Paycheck Protection Program. If small businesses utilize their proceeds during the first 8 weeks after they have received the loan toward payroll, utilities, lease payments, mortgage payments, that portion of the loan that was dedicated after the post recipient of the loan for 8 weeks, that will be deducted from the overall amount of the loan. And so that is the incentive for small business borrowers to utilize these loans for payroll in particular. And because of the limited amount of funding, to maximize your forgivability, you would have to use at least 75% of those proceeds toward payroll, and then the remaining 25% used during that eight-week period to utilities, lease payments, and mortgage payments. So the Paycheck Protection Program launched on this past Friday. We encourage all small businesses and nonprofits to have conversations with their existing lenders to determine first, are they engaged with SBA? Do they plan to participate in this program? We also, and we'll mention that later in the presentation, we have a listing of lenders. If your particular lender may not be participating, we have that information on our district office website. Next, and the initial response to the COVID-19 disaster were economic injury disaster loans. And subsequently, an additional benefit to the economic injury disaster loans was the ability to provide for emergency economic injury grant. These grants could go up to $10,000, and the applicant does not have to repay it. And it is a true grant. So regardless if you are approved for the loan or not approved for the EIDL, the full economic injury disaster loan, this advance can be utilized by the small business owner immediately. Once they are approved for the advance, typically within 3 days, they receive that funding. So let's talk a little bit more about the larger economic injury disaster loan. These loans can go up to $2 million. They are for a period of up to 30 years. For small businesses, their rate of interest is 3.75%. For nonprofits, and included in nonprofits are the faith community or houses of worship, are 2.75%. So these loans are very competitive and can be utilized for operating expenses. So businesses can use them for payroll, for accounts payable, and so they are designed to provide that economic infusion that is required at this time. SBA has also automatically provided for deferment of payment and interest, of principal and interest for a 1-year period after the disbursement of these loans. So how do you apply and where do I go? And what I would suggest is for all small businesses to go to the SBA website, sba.gov/coronavirus. This site will list all the current initiatives that SBA has for small businesses. So you can access information about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the Paycheck Protection Program. All of it is listed at sba.gov/coronavirus. And we do get a lot of questions. Obviously, SBA stands ready to support small businesses and nonprofits. We have many resource partners across the state as well to help prepare applications, to help bring together documents that will be needed depending on which program or initiative the small business will pursue. And there are institutions that many of us are familiar with. The Small Business and Technology and Development Centers that are located at our universities, clearly now operating in a virtual environment, but they are partnered with SBA to provide technical assistance. Our women's business centers, one located in Asheville, Charlotte, Raleigh-Durham, and Fayetteville as well. And for our veterans, we have the Veterans Business Opportunity Center in Fayetteville that can help our veteran community. So not only is SBA available and supporting these initiatives, we have our resource partners standing ready as well. So in closing, and we'll, as I mentioned, Kit, want to leave a lot of time for questions, in particular with the Paycheck Protection Program. We realize that is just recently launched. We would encourage small businesses to go to our website, sba.gov/coronavirus, so that they can see the full amount of relief programs that are available and to pursue them. The economic injury disaster loans are available directly through SBA. You will access an online portal to apply for those loans. You have virtual support for that. In a typical disaster, we would have on-site recovery centers, but because of the nature of this disaster, we are operating in a virtual environment, as well as our resource partners. For the Paycheck Protection Program, you can go directly to your existing lender to access information and to begin that application process. So with that, Kit, I will conclude my prepared remarks, and Sharon and I just want to compliment Sharon on the work that she's been able to do in Western North Carolina. We were chuckling earlier. She arrived in North Carolina. She's been with SBA for, I believe, over 12 years, but she arrived about 30 days before me in the Charlotte district office. So we arrived just in time to be engaged in this significant recovery effort. But Sharon has a lot of passion, and I really appreciate the work that she's doing there in Western North Carolina. She's been a very strong member of our team. So with that, I'll stop and see if I can work the technology and stop sharing my screen and then come back to the chat officially.
Well, we have a lot of questions, and but before we do that, I heard this morning that from Reuters that the White House is seeking another $250 billion, and on top of the $350 billion that was already granted. What are you hearing about that, Thomas?
Candidly, I have been on town hall meetings all morning, so that is hot off the press for me.
All right. Well,
but I did understand that there was going to be potential additional funding. Now, obviously, this will go through a process in Washington, but just in general discussions, there is a strong interest. As I mentioned, we have over 900,000 small businesses in North Carolina. There are 30 million small businesses nationwide. So this is a key way not only to assist small businesses with the payroll protection program, it is also directly an incentive to keep people employed. And that's what we need to do during these trying times. So while I haven't seen the official word, I appreciate you sharing that with me.
My understanding is that a decision should be made by Friday. So I would think more money would be good, because some of the questions we're having is there are some people who've gone to their banks, and the banks will say they've already expended all their cash, or maybe they're going to a bank and they don't have a current relationship with that bank. So what is the small business to do if that's the situation? If they've been told by their bank, we've already expended all the funds, or they don't have the kind of relationship, perhaps it's a place where they deposit money and take it back out, but they haven't had a loan relationship with them in the past.
Sure. As I mentioned, we do have a listing of approved lenders in North Carolina on our website. That's sba.gov/NC, sba.gov/NC. And so that could be a resource. While we don't recommend specific lenders, that would be a resource for individuals that are maybe currently as you described, have a banking relationship, and the bank has reached its limit, and they're looking for other opportunities. There are lenders. We are assigning up new lenders that have not participated with SBA before.
Okay, that's good news.
Can I chime in, Kit?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to say, for those that have not applied for their advance loan, first of all, to make sure that you do that, so that you can make sure you're in line or in the portal for your up to $10,000 forgiveness loan. And then secondly, understanding that you may want, of course, everyone would want money to be forgiven, but don't count out the economic injury disaster loan. Once again, the funds, you do not have to take the funds, but in case you need them, it would always be a good thing to apply for them. And then if you don't want them dispersed, or you don't need the amount of funds that were maybe allocated to you, you can deny that disbursement. But just to make sure that you can cover all bases, that IDA would be a good one to make sure you follow through with.
Well, Sharon, a follow-up question then on that. What kinds of documentation should a business owner have ready and how can they best prepare for the application process?
Well, currently there's a simplified application, so it's like a two-part process. The first part is for the advance loan, and then the second part moves you to the economic injury disaster loan. So in saying that, I would have prepared, SBA has it on their website, what you need, but your typical documents if you were looking for a loan, so your taxes, your organizational chart, or any of your, whatever you need, your financial statements, so that once you are assigned a loan officer, then you will have all the documentation that you need.
Okay, great. Well, there are a lot of questions around timing. There are questions like, if I applied at the end of March and I've heard nothing, do I reapply? Or how can I check the status of an application? How do I go about that? And what's a reasonable amount of time? So that's about 3 questions in one.
Yeah, and you're speaking to the EIDL, Kit?
Yes, I am.
I would say there is a 800 number that is listed on that website that you can call and inquire about your loan. That's 1-800-659-2955, 1-800-659-2955. So we encourage individuals, if they have not heard anything, and Sharon, welcome to chime in as well, but they should get a notification that their application was received, that it is in process. Initially, when the EIDL program was launched, Our understanding from Office of Disaster Assistance was it was a typical 18 to 21 day processing cycle. We've had significant advancements with our own internal IT system, so helping increase that efficiency. But initially the thought was, the projection was rather 18 to 21 days, but the small business certainly can inquire through that 800 number to try to ascertain a status on their loan.
Okay, that's really helpful for people to know that. And in terms of, so how quickly should you hear about the status on an application?
Again, on the economic injury disaster loan, you should receive immediate confirmation on the receipt of a document. They would contact the borrower if there was additional documents needed. And so then you would be in that range of 18 to 21 days before any additional follow-up. For the payroll protection program, we anticipate a lot shorter time period because of the expansion of resources in utilizing the lending community. So not a specific date range, but we expect that to be a much shorter turnaround time.
Okay. Sharon, we're getting a request for your local contact information.Ll share this a couple of times, but can you go ahead and share it, please?
Sure. My email address is sharon.harvey@sba.gov. So that's sharon.harvey@sba.gov. And also you can reach me on my cell phone. It is a cell phone, so I've been telling people to use it as such, and you can text me because for every call I'm on, I get 5. And that number is 202-805-8947. That's 202-805-8947. And I will chime in on that last question. I've been talking to people and of course telling them to call the 800 number. Please, we're just asking you to be patient. I've been telling people, plug up your cell phone, put it on speakerphone, and continue to do what it is that you're doing, because when you call, you probably will be caller number, whatever, 100. So just be patient. As Thomas said, we're saying 18 to 21 days. I know some people are probably saying, but the advance loan said 3 days. That's what came out in type. But I've been telling people, at least give it at least 2 weeks before you try to call and have to wait on that 800 number, and they're going to tell you the same thing. So we're just asking everyone to be patient. Although there's 900,000 of us in North Carolina, there's millions all over the U.S. So we're just asking you just to please be patient, and we're going to assist you as soon as we can.
Well, and folks, I'm seeing that reflected in some of the questions saying that the 800 number is overloaded. Well, it is, and so we're just going to have to try at different times of the day and be persistent, because it's flexibility is the watchword of the day, I'm thinking.
And Kit, on that point, as I mentioned earlier, or should have, we are continuing to enhance the response. Whether it's the call center, adding thousands of additional support staff, whether it's our internal IT system. So I realize we're in the middle of a pandemic, but as this continues to develop, in particular with both initiatives, the efficiencies should increase.
Okay.
Oh, and Kit, I think it was 2 questions ago. No, please do not fill out another application because you have not heard anything. It's just taking time to get through the portal. So don't, clog it up by filling out additional applications just because you haven't heard anything.
Well, and let me also mention in Buncombe County, this won't work if you're outside Buncombe County, but in Buncombe County, there is the One Buncombe Fund we've raised over $800,000 thus far. Want to be at $1 million by the end of this month for grants for individuals who've been laid off, as well as loans for up to $10,000 that could serve as a bridge until you are able to get some federal assistance. And if you go to onebuncombe.org, you can find out information about that process as an interim measure. Can I apply for the Paycheck Protection with someone other than a bank? I've talked to other business owners and our banks must be overwhelmed. They basically tell me I'm on my own.
Well, banks, and then there are credit unions that are involved as well. So, but that is the mechanism. Those loans are made with the private lending community as opposed to SBA. The economic injury disaster loans are direct loans from SBA, but with the Paycheck Protection Program, that would be with a lender with SBA serving as the guarantor of the loan. So if their current, as I mentioned earlier, if their current bank is overloaded or is no longer taking applications, I'd strongly suggest just looking at the list that we have on our office site to see what other lenders may be an option.
Here's a question. If I'm an LLC, do I qualify for anything from the SBA?
It's all small businesses and sole proprietors as well, so all structured small businesses. So, and I agree with Sharon. If I was a small business now, I would look at both programs, both initiatives, and pursue those that met my business model. And it may be that you pursue both, and then at the end of the process, assess which one you think is most beneficial to your business.
What about nonprofits? If nonprofits that don't have people on the payroll, they use volunteers, what's the best tool for them?
You know, I would say clearly assess, but you could still use either one for utilities. All organizations have utilities. They have rent, mortgage payments. So nonprofits are eligible for both the EIDL and the PPP.
Okay.
And I will say that originally when it came out, you could not get funds for both, but just want everyone to understand you can get a PPP and an EIDL. You just cannot use them for the same use of proceeds. So if you're using payroll for one, you can't use payroll in the other one. But if you have some, inventory or something else that you need to pay that's not under the PPP, you can utilize both loans, just making sure that you're not basically double dipping or using the use of proceeds the same on both loans.
Would you please repeat the 800 number again?
Sure, it's 1-800-659-2955. It's 1-800-659-2955.
I see that number in my sleep.
I bet so. This is a pretty individual question, but this individual has clients who want to add a form to his EIDL application. How can he catch up? Can he go back and add a form once the application has been submitted?
Actually, he was one of the early ones that got into the original SBA disaster portal. So actually with his application, if it was not completed, he should have received an email, I think it was 2 Mondays ago, saying, please submit the simplified application. If he had not checked the advanced loan. So if he submitted the simplified application, that's moving through the portal. Then once he gets to the point of the application process, then he will have a case manager and or loan officer that will reach out to him for all the supplemental documentation.
All right, I risk duplicating questions. Because I'm getting duplicated questions. The 18 to 21 days, is that for the application to be processed, or is that how long it will take to get the cash?
That's estimated processing time on the economic injury disaster loan. Once it's processed, and let's assume the positive, if a person is approved, they would be sent the loan documents they would sign. After receiving signed documents, typically there's a 5-day period before funds would be distributed to the small business. So that's the general 18 to 21 days for processing. Loan documents would be signed, and then within about a 5-day period, proceeds would be distributed.
Okay, so it's less than a month, but still, that's a time period people need to consider when they're thinking through how they're going to handle things. Let's see. Let's go to some of the questions. So I think you've answered this question already, but this person is a sole proprietor with no employees, and the unemployment system is difficult right now. Is the better option still unemployment, or is there an opportunity through the SBA for a sole proprietor?
A sole proprietor is eligible for both loans, and then on the PPP side, if for the forgiveness component, they would be able to qualify with their compensation. There's a cap up to $100,000 really for any employee. I was involved with a discussion on yesterday, and obviously you at some point you would have to make a decision between unemployment and a loan proceed. But again, the individual may want to explore both until they make it through the process, and then they can make a decision on what's best for them as an individual.
If you haven't filled out your 2019 tax return, can you apply for these loans?
Yes. Short
Okay.
answer.
Yeah. Good. Let's see. Most of these are timing related. And have any of the emergency funds for the $10,000 bridge amounts been dispersed yet?
Yes, anecdotally, we've heard of small businesses. They may call and say, appreciate your help. We received our grant proceeds. And again, that's up to 10,000. So it's not a guaranteed flat rate 10,000. So it is up to 10,000. So we are aware of some businesses that have started to receive that emergency advance.
Okay. Is the PPP or EIDL available for small businesses that pay independent contractors?
That's a good question, and Sharon, you can correct me, but and you're speaking the 1099 issue, I guess with the independent contractor. It is for people that are on your payroll. There are discussions now around what do you do for that specific scenario. But my understanding of the guidance that we have at this point is that it only applies for those individuals that are literally on the business's payroll.
The ones that you are considering full-time employees.
Sure.
The only way that funds are forgivable is if 75% of the funds are used for payroll. Is that correct? Therefore, if you don't have any payroll, you can't qualify for any forgivable funds?
You could still have a portion of forgivable if it was dedicated toward utilities, lease payments, rent, but the significant, obviously, forgivable amount would be if you had a portion of those proceeds for payroll.
Okay, here's another question. The $10,000 EIDL grant, is that $10,000 deducted from the PPP loan amount request or not?
Yes, it will be used as like a cash in advance, so that what the up to 10, whatever you receive, would be reduced on your total loan value.
Okay.
To keep in mind, obviously inherently embedded in that question is they've applied for both. And so if they are PPP only, that wouldn't be an issue because they would have to apply for that EIDL loan in the advance in a separate process.
Okay, this is a pretty specific question. Please describe what a transportation expense would be. An example of a transportation expense.
What type of company is it? I mean,
Not me.
I'm sorry?
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, in general, transportation expense could be for that, mileage for that company, or expense if they're a delivery service, but it's hard to know exactly. And Sharon, I don't know if you have more, might have more insight, but I would guess we would have to know what type of company they're talking about to know.
Yeah, I think you would have to know what type of company, so you would know what the expenses are. Are you talking about someone that transports patients, and are they trying to write off vehicles, or, what type of transportation is it? Someone trying to write off their Uber, or, I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
For some of these very specific questions, maybe they should talk with the STB. I'm not going to try and say that again. I'm going to get
SBTDC.
SBTDC or Western Women's Center for Small Business.
And Sandra Dennison is on the call, so the SBTDC is on the call.
Yes, and actually we consider them our partners as well. They're not just partners for the SBA. They certainly are for chambers of commerce as well.
Sure.
All right, this is another one, and actually this came from one of my staff members. So will companies be able to take advantage of the retention credit against FICA taxes when processing payroll instead of waiting until taxes are filed? If so, can companies do this now, or are we waiting on guidance to be issued to payroll processors?
That sounds like an excellent question for Sharon to follow up on after the webinar.
I was going to give that one to you. That sounds like IRS, but
it does.
to follow up with it.
Yeah, that's the chamber's finance guy asking that question.
I can only imagine.
we'll get that answer later. All right, let's see. This one is a timing question, which we've already answered. Another one, when can we expect to hear back? Hopefully you now have a better understanding. Both lenders that my company uses say they've stopped taking applications. Will there be others? So we would suggest they go to the online.
I would go to our website. We have a listing, sba.gov/NC, because SBA is encouraging new lenders to become SBA lenders. So we are signing up new lenders as well as a part of the PPP process.
At the risk of being incredibly repetitive, Sharon, please again give us your contact information.
Of course. Email sharon.harvey@sba.gov and 202-805-8947. That is a cell phone, and you can send a text as well.
Great. All right. I know this is of particular interest to organizations like chambers of commerce. Will any of the possible additional funding be allotted to 501c6 organizations? Because right now it is not.
Yeah, I would hesitate to speak if you mean the literal funding that was mentioned this morning.
Yes.
I would not want to venture to guess what would be expanded, because there may be different guidance with this additional funding. As I said, the initial launch, there's been assessments occurring and obviously feedback from the small business community. So there may be changes with additional funding, but at this point, I would say it's just too early to tell.
Well, I know that there's a lot of lobbying going on. In fact, we sent out another letter this morning to sign on to. So chamber execs, be sure to do that. But other 501c6s, look for opportunities to share with your elected officials your desire, because those associations do a lot of good work, especially in a situation like this. For the PPP, does the credit score factor into the determination that this individual currently has decent credit, but it may not stay that way depending on how long this goes on?
My understanding is that really is what is determined during the PPP analysis is a good understanding of a 2-month average of payroll. That determines your amount of loan that you have. And then basic questions about your business. Sharon, are you aware of them pulling credit scores as a process? Because collateral is not
I was told
required.
that they were not pulling credit scores. They were just doing the letter that you were writing to your lender explaining your circumstances, and basically because that's the forgiveness part. But once again, I want everyone to read, although it is forgiven, you need to make sure you have documentation, because your lender or the financial institution that you're working with is gonna have to some way reconcile or see that the amount of loan you were given and what you're actually asking for forgiveness, that you actually have done what it is that you say that you were going to use those funds for.
Right. They will look at those payroll records in that post-loan period of 8 weeks to see payroll costs, what the expenditures were, if you're claiming that. So Sharon is right. You're going to need those documentations for the forgiveness component.
Okay. While applying for the EIDL, I was never asked for my loan amount. How does the SBA determine the amount of my loan?
It's a great question. In general, the response has been they look, obviously review the application. Typically, it's about 6 months of operating capital. Again, that's a generalization, but that's why the information that is requested during the EIDL process is utilized to provide some estimate up to around 6 months of operating.
All right, so is the EIDL and the $10,000 forgivable loan one and the same?
No, there are two components, but you can apply for the advance loan, which is the forgiveness up to the $10,000, and it is forgiven if you receive it, and then if you move forward with the EIDL and you've already received your funds, then it's just reduced from your loan award.
Okay.
Sharon, we may need to clarify that, because my understanding, the $10,000 advance is only reduced from proceeds if you end up refining with PPP. That if you just have an EIDL, that the $10,000 would not impact just a direct EIDL if you went on and were approved for that. But we can clarify.
Well, I'll reread it. Okay, because first they were saying it was deducted, but yeah. Okay.
All right, here's another question. If I applied prior to PPP opening, should we reapply for PPP?
If they applied for what?
If I'm assuming, they didn't say, but I'm assuming they applied for EIDL perhaps. Were there different opening dates for those applications?
Yes, for North Carolinians, March 18th, that was the date that we were declared, anytime from March 18th on for the economic injury disaster loan. The Paycheck Protection program was just started this past Friday. So if they apply for EIDL, they can apply for a PPP, as Sharon mentioned earlier. You can apply for both, and actually, if you have a existing EIDL, roll it into a PPP if you receive a PPP. So you just can't use them for the same proceeds for the same use.
Okay. So one of our viewers was told this morning that they may not be able to count 1099 or owner pay in the calculation for PPP. Does that sound right?
It sounds like that specific instance, it may be how they have the structure of the payment to the owner. In general, the general guidance is that, the sole proprietor may take salary, but as we mentioned earlier, there is a discussion around how to recognize 1099s. And right now, it is just full-time equivalents. So that might be what they're facing.
Okay, this is pretty specific. When this person filed for the EIDL application on SBA.gov, they received a confirmation page to print, but never received a confirmation email. Should they expect to receive an email confirmation? And if not, how should they proceed to confirm that the SBA received and is processing their application?
Was that earlier in the process? Because Sharon, were they sending confirmation pages? I know there have been some enhancements to that system. I'm wondering when they may have applied. Have you heard that before?
Originally, when you were applying, they were giving you you were actually getting an application number. And I know on the new system, and they were saying you would, on the new system, it says you'll get an email, but I have yet to hear people say that they received this email in a timely manner, or if they even got one. So
Okay.
I think that's probably just a small glitch in the system, but my thinking is if you've got an application number, your documents or your application was received.
Another question about timing. So when you say 18 to 21 days, is that calendar days or business days?
I would assume business days, but when we've asked other questions about timing, we've gotten response business days. So I'm assuming 18 to 21 business days. I know it's critical. I don't mean to make light of it because, as you said earlier, businesses are trying to make decisions in lieu of timelines. But Sharon, you can follow up, but I'm assuming that's business days.
Okay.
Will do.
Another one of my employees says, not to beat a dead horse on timing, although that's exactly what we're doing, but what was supposed to be processed in 3 days? Was that the EIDL loan advance? Do those 3 days come after the 18 to 21 days?
That is for the advance, and that is after the advance has been approved. Once approved, and we're assuming that's shorter than the 18 to 21 days, but once approved, then those funds are distributed within 3 days. So it is a shorter time frame to review that emergency advance, and then they're once that decision is made, it is distributed within 3 days.
Okay. This is an individual situation. I'm an officer and only employee in my S Corp, and much of my pay comes from shareholder distributions rather than payroll. Can shareholder distributions be considered?
I don't know, Sharon, have you come across that yet?
On the distributions, everything that I've read or the information that was sent back to me on my question is shareholders and dividends are not allowable. They actually have to pay themselves through a W-2.
Okay.
Through a W-2, you tapered off through a W-2?
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you.
Is PPP available for part-time workers?
My understanding is full-time equivalents.
Okay, that answers that question.
Yeah, everything says FTE. Everything says full-time employees.
Okay. Let's see. Our 501c3 is completely staffed by contracts with a 501c6. Is it possible for the 501c3 to apply for PPP with evidence that staff payroll is outsourced to the C6 through contractual agreements? What kind of evidence would be needed?
I don't have an answer on that one.
Yeah, add that one to the list, Sharon.
Well, and again, some of these I really think you're going to have to contact SBTDC, contact the Western Women's Center. You're going to have to contact the local SBA office, because in some cases, they're going to have to ask you clarifying questions in order to get the answer on this. All right. All right, this one is, and we may have already asked this. Must you apply for EIDL via the SBA first prior to applying for the PPP program? Otherwise, you can't go back and apply for the EIDL. Is that true?
You can apply in any staging you would like. You could apply for a PPP today and then go apply for EIDL tomorrow, or vice versa. So you're not excluded from applying to either program.
Okay. Will I be contacted before the bridge loan is disbursed?
When they say bridge loan, do you think they mean the advance?
I think they mean the advance.
Well, because there is a bridge, so.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Right.
We didn't talk much about that, but there is an express bridge loan that is up, and not to confuse everybody toward the end of the call, there's an express bridge loan up to $25,000 that has a streamlined process, but I'm just not sure if the caller is requesting that information or not.
But in all processes, regardless as to what loan, you will talk to a loan officer. You will not just be dispersed funds. You will actually talk with the loan officer so that you know how much money you're getting, and you will have to sign the documentation. So the only one that does not have the contact is the advance loan, which is the forgiveness. But any of the other loan products, you will actually have to sign documentation, so you will have contact with someone.
That's an excellent point, Sharon, because, and that goes to some earlier questions of applying for both. You can decide not to accept the loan. So on your point, Sharon, before your loan closes, there is discussion because you could apply for both and decide EIDL is better for my business. I'm approved for PPP, but I'm not going to accept that loan. So that's a good point, Sharon. Very good.
All right, we've been asked again, where are the lenders listed on the SBA website?
It's for the North Carolina, it's sba.gov/NC, sba.gov/NC, and that is the district office site. And we have, in trying to continue to update it as well, because as I said, new lenders are being approved that have an interest, but that should be as up-to-date a list as we have of current SBA lenders in the state.
Will any grant amount, loan amount, or PPP loan be considered as income for the 2020 tax year?
Have you seen that in the guidance, Sharon?
I was going to say, currently in the guidance, it says that there's no tax on the forgiveness piece on the loans.
Yeah, I'm glad that question was asked. I gave that Sharon's answer to that question, not knowing my assumption.
That's in the 31-page document.
Yeah. The one we read this weekend, right? I thought that was the case, but I wanted to make sure.
All right. Gosh, some of these are so specific, folks. I'm gonna suggest that you reach out to the resources that have been previously mentioned. And we talked about SBTDC. We've talked about the
Western Women's Business Center.
Yeah.
And as you said, the district office, well, unfortunately, we're here. But, Kit, you can forward those to me, or they can resend those to me. And as I said, my partners are already on the line, so they hear some of the calls, and we can coordinate those answers together.
Great. I'm at the end of the many questions that were asked. Some of them are just, in my estimation, too specific to continue asking, and we're close to the end of time. So I want to make sure that we again talk about the contact information. Thomas Stith, one of the people asked us to reiterate who you are, and Thomas Stith is the director for North Carolina for the SBA, and Sharon Harvey is with the Western North Carolina office here in Asheville. And so if we could get the contact information that you would suggest to everyone.
Sure. And Kit, I just take this time to say thank you again on my behalf and Sharon's behalf and the North Carolina District Office of SBA. We plan, and obviously, to be very engaged throughout the process. And as you saw today, we can help with answers or point to resources. And if we don't have the answer, we'll go about finding the answer for small businesses in Western North Carolina. For a one-stop location for the various opportunities that we discussed today, businesses can go to sba.gov/coronavirus. sba.gov/coronavirus. And that will list, that's the official SBA website that lists all of the different recovery economic and support initiatives that we have with SBA. The 800 number for telephonic support is 1-800-659-2955, 1-800-659-2955, and we encourage individuals to utilize those resources. And again, Sharon has provided her contact information. Sharon is there in Western North Carolina and is there on the ground to support you, along with the district office as well. So again, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity, and we certainly can come back at any time as new information comes about, or to discuss what we've already talked about. We value the importance of small businesses in North Carolina, and we're going to be a part of helping return our economy to its sustainable nature.
Sharon, any last words?
I just want to say I want my 25 counties in Western North Carolina to know that I am here to assist you. If you send me an email or send me a phone call, don't give up on me. If I don't get back to you today, you'll definitely hear from me tomorrow. You know, for those of you who have not applied for the advance loan, the forgiveness piece, please go out and do that. Continue to, as Thomas said, watch the SBA's website as we're adding new loaners, new loan SBA approved lenders often, whether they're inactive going to active and or a new financial institution. So just continue to monitor our site as we can continue to work through this, because things are still fluid and we're still getting answers on this every day. And I have my 3 questions to find answers on, and hopefully, you know, we're learning as we go together. So just continue to be patient, and everyone continue to be safe. And Kit, I thank you and the Chamber for having us to be a part of this with you.
Well, Thomas and Sharon, thank you both for joining us. And on behalf of the Asheville Chamber, I want to thank everyone for what you're doing for your employees, to strengthen your businesses, and to care for your community as we're all dealing with this very difficult situation. I know it's hard. Please try and remain patient and do your due diligence, but remain patient and hopeful, and we will all get through this together. Thank you for joining us today.